Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for waking up early and coming to the session. And especially thanks to our panelists for waking up early and coming to the session. So we're here in a session at Viaccess-Orca about fighting sports content piracy. And I don't think it's a secret for anyone that piracy is a serious issue, and it's only getting worse now that video has much higher value. The drivers of piracy, not just the value of video content and sporting content that's real time, but also the fact that there's virtually unlimited bandwidth available now, and also advances in compression. There are new avenues to distribute valuable content, even over mobile, with HEVC and the new compression coming on board. It doesn't take as much bandwidth, and you can still achieve good quality of service. And online distribution, of course, we're talking about the internet, so there's no boundary. And so how do we fight the issue of piracy when there are no walls, no boundaries, and unlimited distribution? And so we'll talk about first talk about some of the problems that have come up in the real world. We have a gentleman, Aditya Aditya, from the Olympic Organizing Committee to talk about the Sochi Olympics, and we have Alex Terpstra, who's the CEO of Civolution, which offers forensic watermarking. François Moreau de Saint-Martin from Viaccess-Orca, who will talk about real-time monitoring, and they've developed a solution together for this issue of wide-open content piracy, and I won't steal their discussion. But why don't we start, and I'm Steve Hawley, I'm the head of Advanced Media Strategies, and I'm a consultant and industry analyst. So why don't we start by just having everyone introduce themselves, introduce yourself, your company, and maybe one or two things you're observing here at IBC that's relevant to this discussion. François?
Okay, thank you, Steve. Good morning, and thank you for joining this panel this morning. So I'm François Moreau de Saint-Martin, the CEO of Viaccess-Orca. So Viaccess-Orca provides with solutions to protect and enhance the value of content services and increase the engagement of the users. So among the range of products and solutions that we propose, so we have of course set of content protection technologies and services to fight piracy that we'll discuss a bit later during the panel.
Hello, good morning everyone. I'm Aditya, working at the International Olympic Committee's Television and Marketing Services Department as Senior Broadcast Rights Manager, and looking after supporting the rights sales as well as on the protection side, coordinating all the monitoring program, anti-piracy program, and digital media, working with the broadcasters. And I'll probably speak later about our experiences so far.
Good morning, my name is Alex Terpstra, CEO of Civolution. Civolution is a company specialized in content identification solutions for various application areas in this industry, and one of those areas is anti-piracy, what we are discussing here this morning. And in my previous life, I've been also responsible for conditional access business, so I feel quite closely to François' business from those days, and but now happy partner of Viaccess-Orca in this for this topic.
Good, thank you. So before we get started with some of the stories we're going to hear in this session, who are these pirates? You know, it used to be, we'd think of pirates as 15-year-old guys up in their bedroom with nothing else to do and sharing files and copying music and so forth, but now pirates are professional operations. Because we're talking about the internet, there are no international borders anymore. They can masquerade as very legitimate websites, and many people would never know they're pirates. In fact, sometimes pirated content even attracts advertisers and sponsors, which makes them look even more legitimate. And of course, that takes away advertising revenue from the legitimate distributors. So our experts are going to present two examples. I mentioned the Sochi Olympics, but we'll also talk about the World Cup. In fact, Viaccess-Orca ran a program this summer to track piracy during the World Cup football matches, and it was a very successful program. So why don't we, and then after we all hear some stories of real-life experience, we'll open it up for discussion. If anybody in the audience would like to ask us anything, you're certainly welcome to ask. I'm probably not going to be the guy to answer. These guys are the experts. So why don't we start? Start with you, Aditya, and talk about maybe not only Sochi, but how the Sochi experience was different from the London experience or from earlier experiences, and how the threat has grown and how the way you have fought these problems has grown and evolved.
Thanks, Steve. I think I will start by giving you context why piracy is an issue for a rights owner like the IOC, as well as our partners, the rights holding broadcasters. And I mean, it's probably known, but we started looking at this anti-piracy operations before Beijing 2008 in more a technology advanced way. And the key for us was that internet had reached a critical mass that piracy could impact our rights and our partnerships. And for sports rights, everything is based on live rights, live exploitation, and on the official platforms, of course. So the key is that if we are able to identify any illegal stream or any illegal pirated content quickly in matter of minutes or instantly, rather than taking hours to find or send a takedown notice. So the mandate was that we should be able to identify a clip as small as 100 meters, which is 10 seconds at the max, and looking at it, it may go even lower. So that was the mandate. We started with Beijing and identified what are the technologies that can help us with. Then we started with fingerprinting technology, starting with Beijing, and we had decent experiences. And after that, it has simply grown, and it's a massive explosion due to internet or all different devices, or ease of access of streaming, or ease of access to kind of pirate the content, whether through social media means, connecting by different means. In terms of numbers, Beijing was in total 15,000 illegal incidents that we reported. It went up to 35,000 for Vancouver, and for London we had a massive number, which was about 90,000 incidents, and Sochi was a little bit smaller than London, but still 65,000, which was almost the double that of the last Olympics. So in terms of incidents, all this has been incredible. And what we have been able to do is to identify all the live or VOD streams almost in matter of minutes, including the takedown. So the key is automation for us in terms of technology, and be proactive. And just taking a step back in terms of identifying all the different means to tackle piracy. The first one we identified, and that this has grown rapidly, is to have people access to the official content more and more, and asking our rights holders to exploit their rights to the extent possible through whatever means, through whatever platforms they have rights to, of course, and through every possible means. And also working with the major internet players like Google or YouTube to not just using their back-end technology, but also to promote this official broadcast. But of course, at the end of the day, what matters is we are able to identify any illegal stream or any illegal VOD content anywhere over the web, using all different languages, monitoring web crawling skills, and then send a takedown notice as soon as possible.
So if you identified a pirated stream, you use automation to issue takedown notices. What happened after that? Are you able to monitor that something in fact has been taken down, or how would you tell somebody to divert the pirates or the people looking for pirated content? How do you get them incentive to go to legitimate content?
I think the process starts before the start of the games, with the opening ceremony, that we are able to promote the official broadcast, whether working with Google on their search engine to have an online watch button, or on YouTube to have the official links of the broadcasters again. So it starts as well as with the social media platforms like Facebook, if you are able to provide all the official links, and then working with the pirated or even the pirating platforms or linking websites to the extent possible. I mean, we're never sure what new will come up, but if you are able to link with them in somehow or having a meaningful conversation before the event start, and able to tell them this is a list of official broadcasters and they will exploit it fully or 100% on digital. So basically saying that there is no need of pirating it because it's all available out there. And then in terms of illegal content, usually we haven't seen anybody will say, okay, now I'm not going to pirate anymore. Sometimes it does happen, and which is great, but we are not able to kind of change it from an illegal content to a legal content during the event per se.
So it's almost like the horse has left the barn, or the cat is out of the bag if the piracy has taken place. But later, the other half of this equation, of course, is forensically going back and identifying content that's been pirated. And it sounds like you've had some involvement in that. Can you talk about how you identified pirated content later?
Yep, I think the key is what has evolved is live fingerprinting. From Beijing, it was more a kind of more based on VOD fingerprinting, so we were not able to identify precisely the live streams per se, if they are going live. And I think the technology has evolved now to identify all the live streams per se through fingerprint technology. Of course, now even the level of piracy has evolved that you're not able to identify just by using fingerprinting per se. Either the frames are cut or it's distorted in a way that you probably need either a manual intervention to identify that it's actually an illegal stream or illegal content, and make sure that it is your content and not mixed with any other content. So I think technology has evolved as well as the level of piracy and pirates involved, and what we have definitely seen for Sochi games, and I think we will talk about it for the World Cup, is evolution of all the GIFs or the Vines, which are very small content, but legitimate content in terms of rights ownership. But now we have an issue in terms of either it's a fair use or it's pirated content basically all over the web, and it's being shared on a massive scale through top social media players. So I think we have our next challenges coming through different means.
So if I was to walk away from this session with one thing that I've learned about your experience, what would it be? And what would you recommend to the audience that's got massive amounts of very valuable live content?
I think first, before we talk about anything else, even thinking about piracy, is that first put your official content out there live as well as on demand. Basically put the content into the devices of users, because they will decide when they want to consume it. Most of them want to consume sports content live, and they want to consume it anywhere, anytime. So basically that will be the theme. And then working with the local or global players like Google, so the world, or Facebook, or social media players, how that official content can be promoted heavily before the event and during the event. And then IOC leads the Anti-Piracy program to work with us, collaborate with us in identifying the sources of this piracy. And then we do use technology, and we'll see what we can do for future by using fingerprinting or other technological means, how we can detect all the illegal piracy, and then how we can identify any local platforms that broadcasters may have that we can already identify and get into a conversation, either meaningful or otherwise, and then identify what are the ways to tackle those before. And I think we will have to keep our options open, because technology is evolving so fast. Whatever we decide today may not be 100% relevant for real. It's so fast.
Excellent. Well, I understand that you were one of the pioneers in using automated content recognition back in 2008. So I think people can benefit a great deal from your experiences. What I'd like to do is transition over to Alex and have him talk a little about how that content recognition technology works.
Thanks, Steve. So, from our perspective, there is two types of technologies that can be used in this context. The first one already indicated by Aditya, that was first deployed in 2008 in Beijing, is indeed fingerprinting technology. Fingerprinting technology helps you to basically automate the identification of illegal content, whether those are live streams or whether those are on-demand clips available on various platforms. So the sheer amount of content out there requires automation. With fingerprinting, you basically have an automated way to identify content. You know what the content is, and it's really very similar, if you're not familiar with the technology, to a fingerprint. You analyze the unique characteristics of the object, so my finger or audio or video is basically the same thing. You analyze the unique characteristics that you translate into a digital fingerprint, and then you can identify content, but you always need two parts. So you need to have the reference fingerprints, so basically the database that contain fingerprints and a description of what they belong to, what content, what assets. And you have, during the live broadcast and the content that you find on the web through services like VO's service, you find what we call suspect content, either streams or on-demand assets. You fingerprint again those assets as well, and you've compared it to the reference database with reference fingerprints. So if you can close that loop in real time, then basically you can, at the same time something that is uploaded on a website or a stream is started, you already at the same time have your reference fingerprints in the database, so you would be able to identify such a stream or such an asset immediately against your database. So there's always the two components. You need to have the reference database, and you need to take the fingerprints from the suspect assets. You can imagine that in a live situation that is potentially a little bit more complex than if it is assets that are not live, because you have more time to basically build up your database. So what I think in particular learned in 2008 is how to create such a system that works in real time. So build a reference database of fingerprints from real live feeds. It was deployed for the first time. So basically that's fingerprinting. You can use audio and video fingerprinting. Sometimes the combination thereof, depending a little bit on the type of content. Sometimes you may find more easily matches on video, or sometimes more easily on audio. So both technologies are available. But it still doesn't really help you identifying what is actually the source of the piracy, which is where the second technology comes into play, which is called watermarking. So with watermarking, you can actually make content unique for each individual. If we are able to, if you take, for instance, a service that is distributed through set-top boxes, in a set-top box you could actually add a watermark to the content that allows you to identify a stream that comes from that particular box. Why? Because with watermarking, you basically modify slightly the content, and again, it can be done in audio and video, in such a way that the identity of the set-top box or the identity of the user becomes actually part with the content itself. So in that case, after an illegal copy is found somewhere, and you would detect the watermark that could be present in that content, you would actually be able to say it came from that particular subscriber, or it came from that particular OTT stream that was delivered to that particular person. So that's kind of the second step to allow you to also trace the source of the piracy, not only fight the streams and the files that are available, but also basically take away the source of the piracy. And if you have a very advanced system, you can do that in real time as well, and perhaps even during the event already take away the source by revoking the license of that particular person that has access to the service.
Thank you. Very concise. So that talks about the tracking during and after the fact, and of course we're talking about a combined solution here where we're also monitoring and detecting things up front. So it's almost a one-two punch, and it appears that it doesn't replace the need for CAS or DRM. It complements them because it takes place. This takes place in rebroadcasted and redistributed content. So one does not replace the other. But we haven't talked about the live monitoring yet, and I think you're probably the best guy to talk about that. And we'd love to hear more about Anti-Piracy. And tell us a story or two. Of course, you ran a program around the World Cup and the soccer matches over the summer. So if we can talk about that, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, this FIFA World Cup was a good example to monitor what's going on in the field of live streaming redistribution for a major sport event. Quite interestingly, so many games in the FIFA World Cup were free to air in many countries in the world, and still there was a huge level of illegal streaming redistribution. So with our Anti-Piracy service, we monitor and detect these illegal streams and estimate the audience they get. And we identified over 20 million viewers for illegal streams of the World Cup, which is quite huge in this context. So and there are some interesting points from this. For instance, there is more illegal consumption during the afternoon than during the evening. Where does it come from? We do that in the evening. We are in front of our TV sets, and there were a lot of legal offerings to access the games on our TV sets, either free to air or paid for, but legal offerings. In the afternoon, many people are not in front of a TV set, and they want to enjoy the games in an OTT mode, on a PC, a tablet, a smartphone, whatever. And in this respect, the legal offering was not as good as the one on TV. And that's, in my eyes, the reason why more people were using the pirate services during the day than in the evening, which echoes what you said, Aditya, that the quality of the legal offering and the availability of the content on all the platforms is one of the key points in the development of piracy, or the fight against piracy. So in what we are doing, we are assessing the situation and detecting the streams. We have also real-time operations with the takedown notices. We sent over 3,200 takedown notices during the World Cup. To whom? Actually, what's interesting is that these illegal services are businesses leveraging legitimate companies. They leverage legitimate content platforms, legitimate CDNs, and so on and so forth. And that's so when we detect the content platforms it comes from, we send takedown notices, and it's a real-time operation. And we enjoy relative success with these takedown notices. We, for instance, something like over 35% success with the content platforms, over 50% success with the social media, which also a way to share these links. So that's the real-time operations, which are something important, of course, as well in this fight. It happens real-time. There is also, on top of this, we collect evidences to be able to take legal actions afterwards. And this then, these evidences can leverage also the technologies of fingerprinting and watermarking that Alex presented before, which was, of course, an important tool for the fight against this kind of piracy.
Well, clearly with 20 million content streams and 3,200 takedown notices, it had to be an automated process, which underscores your point as well. It's just coming so fast and so furious. Only an automated solution could work. I could not imagine somebody manually analyzing all this content. So, what does it look like? Take me through the process. You've detected an illegitimate stream, and you issue a takedown notice, but what does that look like? I mean, how do you detect it? Do you have a probe out on the internet, or how does that work more on a physical level?
Yeah, so we have a range of tools to detect and monitor all these services. Actually, it's the access to the content go through either link farms or social network, and so we know many of these link farms, and we monitor them, and we continuously identify new platforms. And actually, during the World Cup, we identified something like 10 new platforms involved in this fight against piracy, which is quite impressive as a development of this sort of services. Well, so we have so all the tools to monitor what's going on, to identify the data about what is the content platform involved, and to send a takedown notice to the right content platform with information they need to shut down an illegal stream.
So the takedown notice, somebody writes by hand, please take your site down, right? Okay. Well, let's move on to the trends in this this situation. How is this developing? You've mentioned social media. You've mentioned link farms. So I can imagine going to a website and seeing links to different events. And because these illegitimate websites are very sophisticated, they probably have a designer on staff to make it look really good and have screenshots and maybe GIFs of people scoring goals and things like that. But how do you see all this developing over, say, the next year or several years? And how do you see your fight against it evolving also?
Okay, so the starting point that these pirate services are basically using the same technologies as the legal ones. They enjoy all the capabilities of streaming over internet. They leverage CDNs, they leverage UI technologies, and they build user experiences which are as good as many of the legal services. Look at Zona, for instance, in a multi-screen. It's a multi-screen illegal service, and sorry, it looks quite nice, and that's a fact of life, and this is what we have to fight against. So they leverage these technologies like the legal ones. In the evolution of the fight against these players, the fact that these are businesses is something that, as an industry, we start to look into more and more. What I mean here is that they are there to make money. Money comes from either subscription or from advertising. In both cases, the industry has started to work how to jeopardize their business by preventing advertising on this kind of sites, by looking into where the money is flowing, and to consider how to fight piracy also from this money perspective is, I believe, a strong trend that we have to look into.
So it's almost like the old I don't know, the old espionage story, follow the money or something, right?
Exactly, yeah, follow the money is the right word.
Well, I think we have a few more minutes before we can open it up to questions from the audience here, but do any of you have any other stories you'd like to tell where you've detected piracy, you've detected illegitimate content floating around out there, and how you made the attack and how you solved the problem? Why don't I start with you, Alex? I think you mentioned somebody, you mentioned some examples before we sat down, so...
Actually, just to what François was saying, I heard an incredible story yesterday, actually here at the IBC, where it was about an illegal service, like you mentioned, a multi-screen illegal content service, which looked really, really nice. They made a lot of money, mostly based on advertising. And actually they were concerned about piracy of their service. So they were looking into content protection to protect their illegal service because they were so successful. So it goes really, really very, very far.
That takes a lot of nerve.
Yeah, it takes a lot of nerve, actually. So yeah, in our world, so we're talking here particularly about live events and live sports, but there's of course there is a very significant other side of the industry which faces piracy issues just as much, which is maybe not necessarily live sports. So we do a lot of work for the movie studios, for instance. In that field, we're all aware of the illegal movies that can be found anywhere, also in very nicely designed services these days on the internet. I think what we've learned is that over the years, technology solutions like ours and other companies have evolved quite a bit, and the way to find content, like the VO service is doing, that's not what we are doing, but then to identify content and to trace back the source of the problem. We can still try to take down services at the volume that is necessary, and if you see the statistics, for instance, for companies like Google, on how many links they remove on a weekly basis, it's exploding. It goes through the roof. So you need to address both sides of the story in my mind, which is, yes, you need to take down services as quickly as possible, but you also need to try to find the source of the problem. And the source of the problem quite often is not, a hobbyist hacking into a service. It is, professionally managed criminal organizations that make a lot of money from these services, and they use sophisticated tools. So we need, I think, as an industry, all the available security solutions out there, and bundle the individual strengths of all the different solutions to fight this problem. And like you said in the beginning, technologies are not necessarily replacing each other; they're strengthening each other. You need to have a good, secure delivery solution with conditional access or DRM to protect your service delivery. You need fingerprinting to automate the search of illegal streams. You need watermarking to find the source of the problem. And I think the interesting step that the industry is taking now, and I think our partnership is an example of that, where all these things are now coming together and become pre-integrated solutions that customers can actually deploy without a lot of hassle. When we started many years ago, we actually only had components, and we needed to build solutions specifically for the event, which is quite painful to in terms of integration and testing and make everything work. I think now the state of the industry is where we have pre-integrated solutions that have proven to work and are quite efficient in fighting this problem.
So I guess to sum it up in just one statement, there are a lot of smart people out there, and you have to be smarter.
It's a rat race.
Ahead of it.
It's a rat race, and it will always be.
Yeah. So Aditya, I've not meaning to ignore you, but how will you and the Olympics be smarter during the next Olympic Games, based on what you've learned in the previous ones?
I think what we spoke about, and what François and Alex mentioned about use of technology and their various services or various different service providers, I think we need to normalize or find the commonality to first make the users aware where the official content is, and using those technologies also to help and detect the official content which is getting pirated. And I think we face a key issue in future, because the users are getting used to finding their content for free, even though most of the Olympic Games or big events like FIFA World Cup are available for free in most of the territories. But users, if I want to watch a football game or a volleyball match or a basketball event today in a territory where I may not have a broadcaster, it's not easy. And either I have to pay €3.5 here, €4.5 on another website. But if I want to watch everything for free, I can get it on one single website, which will give my link to the unofficial or illegal stream. So I think the users are getting used to this. So we need to act collectively on that habit as well, that users get used to the official content and not the unofficial source. And then, of course, on top of that, using the technology, we have to work with CDNs or even at the local level as much as possible, how we can leverage our relationships with different social media platforms to make users aware where the official content is. And of course, this needs automatic detection during the event, when the event is happening, and work with other rights owners as well as the rights holding broadcast. So it's more a collective exercise to make people aware of where the official content is. Having all the technology means detect the unofficial content and maybe replace it or replace it with either the official content or replace it with at least the link of the official content. Yes. So we have to. I think technology is evolving, and we'll probably hear more on these technologies that will evolve. And as you said, it's still a race. I mean, we're still fighting, and probably we'll face newer issues tomorrow.
Well, this is a fascinating discussion, and I think that people that come to IBC and look at DRM and conditional access and the traditional content protection technologies really miss a big part of the picture if they don't look at monitoring and forensics. And so it's great that you thought up this panel, and thank you for inviting me to moderate. And especially, it's great to have had Aditya here, a real expert in the area that's actually had real-world experience. And you're not talking about the customer; you are the customer. You're the guy doing it. So it's an honor to have you here. It's really great. Maybe we want to, if anybody has any final comments before we open it up for questions, why don't we just go down the row here? Any final comments about? Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can actually walk this around here. There's so much background noise, I have a hard time hearing people.
Thanks very
Identify
much.
yourself, too.
My name is Kieran Quinn with Delta Tray. We've actually been involved in many of the legal services for Olympic Games and FIFA World Cup online. François, I'd like to verify a number. Did you say there were 20 million illegal streams for the FIFA World Cup you identified? Was that the number you said?
I said over 20 million viewers.
Viewers, okay. It sounds like bad news and good news, and here's why. Listening to what Aditya said, make it legal, make it available. FIFA said that the global stadium was 1 billion plus people, global digital stadium. Let's make the assumption that the average stream view for those legal people were 1, maybe even a half. That means that the percentage of illegal streams was maybe 2 to 5%. It's a big number, but relatively speaking, it's incredibly low. So it sounds like some of the work that's being done, which means is working out, which means the carrot is the good stuff, and the stick is what you guys are doing to make sure it's taken down. So it sounds like high 20 million bad number, but relatively speaking, pretty low number.
So when you look at the World Cup is in general a product which is well marketed in the different countries. The rights are widely acquired, deployed. A lot of it is free to air. So this is an event that shouldn't be pirated to a large extent. So it means that for other products or for other events which are only free to air, which are less marketed in all the countries in the world, the piracy is even bigger.
I can add something from Sochi experience, and I think we need to look at the viewership level, and it may not be an easy task to identify the actual audience of illegal streams. I may be wrong, but I don't think we have a technology to detect 100% where is the illegal viewership. But to the extent available, we did an estimate, and for Sochi, online viewership or by illegal means was 2% of the total viewership on official content, digital speaking. And I'm not counting the television viewership. Television viewership is still the majority of the viewership by estimate. But digital legal, or digital illegal was 2% of the digital or total digital consumption. So I think it's fairly important that we still need to act through technology. I mean, I think we can still live peacefully at the end of the event, but if that 2% increases, then I think we all will be nervous.
And it will increase for the pay events such as Champions League.
Could I just ask one question in relation to this? It's an interesting discussion. What FIFA also told yesterday at the multi-screen saloon was that the way to make content available and the license models also have changed, where in the beginning broadcast was licensed already ahead for several games, and therefore it couldn't be bundled with the digital rights. Digital came later, so digital was licensed separately. That caused actually more problems in making the content available widely, because it was not necessarily the same party who had a multi-screen strategy. It were different companies. So is that for the IOC now also that all the rights are bundled, and therefore one client can really exploit all the multi-screen capabilities? Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely, and more so now. The strategy of the IOC has always been what we call internally as a gatekeeper package, which involves all the platforms, all the languages in a territory or region. And we believe for a specific event like the Olympic Games, we can't really splice up because all the 17 days are so condensed in terms of different sports and events. In terms of sheer coverage, I will give you an example. Like for Summer Games, it's about 5,000 hours of total sports competition, ceremonies, and other content. You will need on the busiest day up to 24 simultaneous streams to be able to produce or to have the coverage of each and every moment of the game. So it's very important that, at least from an IBC perspective, that one broadcaster takes everything and puts out everything on the live basis. So it's more and more important now.
Go ahead, you got a question?
Hi, my name is David Rugland from Nordic Content Protection. And I think it's a really interesting discussion here, but what we are not focusing so much about is the end result, because what this is all about is to making sure there's a profit in the end, right? And you were talking about 2 or 3% of piracy, that's fine, but you also mentioned without the microphone that of course on pay events it's much higher. So I think that it's difficult to take that as an example of the real situation, because these are things that are being broadcasted for free everywhere. So it's probably more like what you mentioned, that people actually just accessing this through work until they can get home to the TV set, right? So, but I think if you were looking at real pay issues here, the thing is that we are losing a lot of revenue to piracy, especially in high-paid sports. And there's a lot of problems with this as well. One thing is detecting where everything comes from, that's fine. But does the cease and desist letters work? I mean, if it's only 30% of them that does work, then you really need to step up, because then you have 70% that doesn't work, and the 70% of a huge number then there's losing a lot of revenue stream. So what you need to work on is not just the technology, which is, I think you guys got it nailed. You have the technology in place. You need to make sure the legislation is there. What about all the vines? Is that fair use? You mentioned it. Is it fair use or not? It might be fair use, and then it doesn't matter if you can actually detect it, because you can't remove it. And what about the football games? In football games, is that copyrighted? Not according to the ECJ. So you need to have the wall, you need to have the trademarks, you need to have the music, you need to have the commentary, whatever. It's difficult. It's difficult to actually build the legal cases. So we need to, now we might have the technology fixed, and you will try to keep ahead with the pirates, and it's a rat race. But you need to make sure the legal framework is actually upgraded, and need to make sure that the public opinion is solved as well towards this, and we need to make sure that the local authorities is actually working with this, because you cannot accept this as just an industry task to solve this. You need to make sure that this is actually handled by the society, because this is theft. So I think that this is actually where we need to focus more, is on the implementation of the enforcement and the upgrading of the legislation basis.
I agree. There's a lot of complexity around that as well, and there are organizations that are trying to bundle forces to help getting better legislation, other frameworks. Especially in the United States, for instance, you have this coalition against online video piracy, which is represented by many of the rights owners, for instance, also distributors. But it's not so much technical or commercial people. It's actually the lawyers sitting together in such an organization, trying to build better legal frameworks around this issue. I totally agree. I do think, however, that technology is also helping. If you look at the concept of takedown notices, yes, you can indeed have a service that automatically identifies content on the web and make sure it's the right content indeed, and send out a takedown notice, and hopefully the stream will disappear. But at the same time, it will pop up somewhere else. So you need to continue doing that. You need to have kind of a high volume and a high speed system like François' system has. But what we found interesting is also that if you are able, in a pay TV environment in particular, where the service is distributed through set-top boxes or OTT services that are actually managed, and you can deploy forensic watermarks in such an environment because it's a controlled environment, and you can actually identify the source, there's a different approach to takedown notices as well. You could just simply decide to revoke that particular source from the service, and therefore take away the very source of the problem. But I agree, you do need to have a legal framework to be able to make that work.
Yeah, just one thing about the watermarking. The problem with watermarking is that if you have a hack or you have a normal regular cable TV, it doesn't work. So if you have a hack, like, you need to have an authorized or original box to actually make the watermarking to work. So if you have a hack on that and you're actually using your smart card in a non-authorized receiver, then the watermarking doesn't work. So in a lot of this, if they're smart, the pirates, and some of them are starting to be smart. A lot of them have been stupid for many years, but some of them are starting to be a little bit smarter. And if they are smart, then they won't use their own subscription like that. They will make sure that you can't find them. But that doesn't take any way away from the technology. I mean, you have to have the technology in place, even though it might not be 100% efficient, because without the technology, you're not getting anywhere. So it's not that you don't need the technology. You absolutely need it, but you just need everything to follow up on the technology as well.
If I can just add, at least I'm not a lawyer, so I won't speak any legal language, but at least on our side, what we have worked with is to collaborate with the local authorities as much as possible, and this is where the broadcasters are key for the rights owners, because they will know the legal environment on their side and identify who are the key people or key organizations to approach before the event. So that's why our anti-piracy operation kind of starts 1 year before the actual events happen. And I think that's where the collaboration is the key, either with the broadcasters as well as all the local players, all the digital platforms. And I think somewhere we did touch upon, I think it was mentioned that one of the illegal pirated website wanted to use the technology. I think it's key that we have some sort of standard for the platforms, the social media platforms or the web platforms like YouTube. YouTube does use their content ID solution, but that others like Facebook or Twitter, etc., are able to use a technology that can identify or that can be utilized. So whether it's a third party or their own technology, but I think we need a mix of all these technologies. That is important, and the technology is important to identify the incidents that we can report to the organization or the legal authorities as well. And I think the time frame, probably we'll have to work on this for a few more months or years to have a kind of a normal solution worldwide. But I think technology will remain a key so that we can at least identify the incidents and report those incidents to the appropriate authorities.
One comment I also wanted to make on what you said is that I agree with your point about the legal aspects, but in my eyes it's not so much a matter of lawyers, but it's first of all a matter of business in the sense of developing the awareness of the key stakeholders. The local authorities are part of these key stakeholders. The legal players involved, even not voluntarily and willingly in this business, are also to be aware of what it means. And even brands that would advertise on pirate services should be aware that, for instance, it's to a large extent similar to counterfeiting. And these brands are very concerned by counterfeiting. And what we're talking about is a bit similar. So this awareness is crucial to be able to build a legal framework. But I completely agree with your point.
Thank you. We have a comment from this gentleman here. We have time for maybe one or two after him, okay?
Closing Kennedy for a professional question, which is that have you noticed any correlation between the cost of paid content versus piracy? So, for example, if it's a movie that's £4.49 on TVOD, do you think that if it was £3.49 or £2.49 that there would be less piracy of it? Have you noticed any elasticity in piracy?
I think there's definitely a relationship between cost of content and piracy, and there is, I think, even other, perhaps even more extreme cases if you have pay-per-view events. We see that from some of the pay-per-view sports events in the United States, for instance, that can be quite expensive just to see one single match.
Yeah.
And then the incentive for piracy is maximum. It's one single match. That's where it's happened. It's live. You want to see it live, and the cost price is very, very high. So it is for pirates that are doing it more from a hobby standpoint. It is a strong incentive to try to break into service, but certainly also from a commercial standpoint, because you can actually make a lot of money in a relatively short period of time if you can start an illegal stream at that moment in time. And even from a risk perspective, it may be quite attractive because it's a short event. So if you can make your money during a short period of time, and then the event stops, and also the risk stops. So I see there a strong relationship.
Does it suggest that content is too expensive? Not necessarily live content I'm talking about, but why is it, for example, that when you used to only get DVDs and no video on demand, you'd hire a DVD or rent a DVD for £4, but now that there's no bricks and mortar cost, it's still £4?
Well, look what happened in the music industry. We were used to pay a lot of money for music CDs for a long time, which had no relationship at all to the production cost anymore. The industry overcharged the consumer so much that the society just didn't accept that anymore, and actually, I think on a very, very large scale accepted that piracy was something kind of normal because we all felt ripped off by the content providers at that time. Now, I don't think in video it is that bad as it has been in music for a while, but it's certainly a relationship. And I think therefore, and Aditya, you were mentioned as well, make content available on every platform and make it available in easy accessible services. And hence, you see the success of Netflix. It's changing the business model completely. For a very reasonable fee, you have a huge amount of content available. So why would you go out and take illegal content if it is made available to you in a very easy, compelling way for not too much money?
Just add on the technology aspect, I think digital allows you to entertain the users or engage them in all different means, and that's where the technology at the front end is key. To have them engaged or give them what they don't see normally for any event. So I think that's the key. Whether it comes with a fee, I think that's what is a more marketing exercise that rights owners or broadcasters need to do probably before what people are ready to pay for it. But people are ready to pay for quality. That's the key, I think. And if you have the front end which gives you as a user enough of engagement, they will go for you. I mean, Netflix, as you said, Alex, is the perfect model, and that is true probably even for the live sports events.
Okay, we'll take this one last question.
Hello, I'm Cam from Format Technology. I have a technology question. I wonder, how do you protect contents live on peer-to-peer networks?
So peer-to-peer networks, of course, have a different distribution model in that sense. The technical distribution is slightly different than other models. However, from a content source identification perspective, you can still do the same tricks. So you can still identify content from a particular source using technologies like watermarking or fingerprinting in terms of identifying content. But let's say the depth of integration it can be deeper, it can be more complex in a peer-to-peer environment than in an open streaming environment. That's correct.
Yeah, peer-to-peer per se is a distribution mode, and in general, content protection technologies can be applied on content which is shared in peer-to-peer mode. It doesn't change dramatically the way to protect by itself.
Okay, this is such a great topic. We could go on for a long, long time, but we've run up against the end of our hour. And so first off, let's have a round of applause and thanks for the panelists. They did a great job and addressed a lot of complicated issues. And also thanks to the audience for coming. Appreciate your coming. And of course, we're all here, so feel free to mix and mingle. Thank you again.